Welcome back to Rally DNA in association with our kind sponsor, Slip and Grip Automotive. Slip and Grip Automotive are a UK-based motorsport events organiser and members club. They host various event types throughout the year at a number of UK locations, including track days, sprints, tarmac rally testing and social events. They're the sole organiser for the Bont Rally stage in Mid-Wales, a great tarmac stage providing great prep for crews before tarmac events in the UK, Ireland or further afield. To find out more, visit www.slipandgripautomotive.co.uk, the link of which is in the description of this episode, and be sure to follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Here at Rally DNA, we practically live in the rallying past, so it's no surprise that we love us some historic rallying. I'm guessing most of you listening do too. No doubt in part due to the increasing homogenisation of our sport, historic rallying seems to be in a stronger place with every passing year, loved by fans and competitors alike. Here in Ireland, the Killarney Historic Rally is one of the highlights of the calendar, and the historic field on regular tarmac events seems to be packed out on a regular basis, with crews enjoying fantastic camaraderie and competition. The FIA European Historic Rally Championship is growing in prestige and now consists of 9 rounds across a variety of surfaces. More and more show events are cropping up all over Europe, aping the success of the likes of Rally Legend, which of course we recently visited. However, getting out and putting on a show is one thing. Competing in a rally that replicates the format of days gone by is another thing entirely, especially if you're in some historic machinery. This means big mileage, and not just rallying on a Sunday, but for up to 5 days. The East African Safari is one such event that has become a favourite of many, and is attracting some big names with every running. Much closer to home, however, particularly for Jamie, is the Roger Albert Clark Rally, named in honour of the first British driver to win a World Rally Championship event, the RAC Rally of 1972. Now running for 20 years, this will be the subject of this episode of Rally DNA. Now we introduce de Gilles to my Hervé, to Duval to my Prévost, Mr. Jamie Arkle, still beaming from having one of his gravel crew stickers prominently displayed on the front bumper of Andrew Nesbitt's Lancer WRC in San Marino. Jamie will be heading down to catch some of the action when the event kicks off very soon. But before that, he has to join me once again as we talk all things RAC Rally. And of course, we'll have a couple of guests along the way. Jamie, how are you, my friend?
Wonderful, thank you. And thanks for that incredible introduction, mate. I don't think I can do that justice. Yeah, especially the Panizzi illusion as well. That's cracking. Yeah, no, very well, very well. Really looking forward to getting down to the forests and also getting to some forests I haven't been to for a long while, particularly the ones on Friday, the likes of Hathran and Mayheron, which I haven't been to for a good long while. So yeah, really excited. How are you?
I'm very good. Unfortunately, kind of feeling a bit of a FOMO coming on as I won't make it over this year. But I think I'm going to have to allocate some annual leave for 2 years' time. Unfortunately, it's all used up this year, so I can't justify the visit. It's certainly one of those bucket list events. And as I said earlier, like it's growing in prestige more and more. And it started off as a prestige event. I mean, look, the first outing attracted, Stig Blomqvist. And yeah, I mean, now looking at it, and as it was last year, it's very difficult to pick out who's going to be the winner, who's going to be on the top step at the end of it, because especially now there's more variety of machinery and it's such an endurance event. The man with the outright pace may not be the winner.
Exactly that, isn't it? I mean, I think the very fact that there's been so much online, on and offline buzz around it this year, it's been completely palpable. And I think it's hard to escape the feeling that it really has gone from strength to strength in terms of public profile. And as you say, you only need to look at the roster of drivers who are attending this year, or competing this year, rather. Yeah, and I completely agree with trying to pick a winner. It's a mug's game. So much can happen in the 350 odd miles between tomorrow and Monday. And let's face it, will do, because it's the world and times might change. But if you're going to run a field full of escorts through the middle of a British wood at all times in the day, then things are going to go awry. So they can and will.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we only have to look at the events of the past runnings, to see that. And, it doesn't take necessarily a mistake, and it can and has taken small mistakes or only just going a little bit over the edge. But also with these historic vehicles, they're not necessarily as robust as modern items, particularly when you're herring through the forest for 5 days. Would you say that with the the absence of Rally GB on the calendar, that this is probably the biggest event, the highlight of UK rallying now?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that probably says more about contemporary modern British rallying than I'd like, but that doesn't detract anything from the RAC. It's an incredible event, but absolutely, there's no argument about it. It's just the fact that it's such an anomaly in the modern world, as we said earlier. Your introduction, how everything's so homogenized. It's gloriously anachronistic, a complete throwback to a very different time. And it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's an adventure. There's a lot to be said for sleeping in the back of a car and eating terrible canned hot dogs for 5 days straight to watch rally cars. Admittedly, it's a lot more enjoyable looking back on me eating sausages in a car, but you live and learn. Do anything to watch a Mark II Escort in a forest.
Not the best for the cholesterol, but that's rallying for you. It's not
You can
necessarily the healthiest lifestyle when you go to spectate, is it? You kind of throw the healthy eating out the window.
I've been telling myself and consoling myself that for every can of oak hot dogs made from pigs' eyelids and bumholes that I burn it all off standing in the cold waiting for the rally cars.
There is that.
But anyway, I feel we've segued from rally cars to processed meat talk.
Rallying and processed meat, they go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, what's a bit of rallying without a sausage and a roll or whatever?
Exactly. It's a sticker right there. Um, yeah, no, absolutely. It's an incredible event. I'm ashamed to say I haven't actually been. This will be my first time actually going. I became aware of it. I think I remember spectating Wales GB in 2004 with my dad and some fellas who were stood next to, sort of encouraging me and my dad to go to this new event called the Roger Albert Clark, because it's such a what it aimed to do, in terms of bringing rallying back to all the forests. We never got round to it. I went away for a few years after that. But yeah, I need to set the record straight, and I fully intend on doing it this year.
Good stuff. Well, hopefully the next time out I'll be joining you as well. Now, it must be worth mentioning before we get into this year's entry list, some of the previous victors. A pretty illustrious list, as I'm sure you'll agree, Jamie. Starting in 2004 with Stig Blomqvist himself, someone we actually saw very recently too. It's been very much a Mark II Escort rally until, well, the last time it was ran, basically. So in 04, we had Stig Blomqvist, Mark Higgins, second time out, Jimmy McRae in 06, Steve Bannister, Malcolm Wilson, Gwyndaf Evans, Stefan Stoof, Gwyndaf Evans again, Marty McCormack, Steve Bannister, Matthew Robinson, rather. 2017, Martin McCormack again. 2019, once again, Martin McCormack, the most winningest man on the RAC. And then last time out, Ryan Champion, who was to break the run of Ford Escort victories in a Tuttle Porsche prepared 911.
I completely get what you mean about the Escort domination, but I think it says quite a lot about the growing stature of the rally and of course the wider, more diverse nature of historic rallying, that you are now getting such strong competition from other cars. Obviously, the Porsches, we've got Stratos and stuff this year. So I think, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but it bodes well, I think, for the future of the rally and historic rallying as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, when you think of historic rallying, the image of a Mark II Escort enters our head immediately. And look, obviously, there's an abundance of them. There's a lot of knowledge there. And some of the, for want of a better word, exotic material, they don't have as much support. So running things on the event is a bit more difficult. But now with the rise in popularity and the rise in stature of historic rallying, we probably have a fair shot that there won't be an Escort winner this year. Though, to be fair, there's plenty of guys out in an Escort that could win it. We have other machinery and other drivers capable of taking the laurels. As you say, this year now we have, the likes of the Stratos piloted by Seb Perez. We've got a multitude of 911s, Chris Ingram in a TR7 V8. So, there's every likelihood that Mark II Escort won't take the victory this time out, which it's kind of conflicting because it's always good to see an Escort win. You can't be a rally fan and not root for someone in a Mark II on some level, but it's nice to have a bit of variety there as well.
Oh, completely. And let's face it, it's not taking away anything from the Escort to say that you kind of fancy something else. When I mean, if it was, I'm sure we'll get to who we think or who we think might win very shortly. Spoiler alert: you may as well chuck a dart at the board. The car that I'm most looking forward to actually seeing is the TR7, partly because it's such a charismatic beast with a big V8 and stuff, but also because it's one of those cars that I always fancied could and perhaps should have done a lot better in period if it had better budget and everything else, which of course it didn't because Austin Rover, British Leyland. But this particular car, the one driven by Ingram, will no doubt be a lot better prepared because it's done by David Appleby Engineering, following the shakedown photos, the fantastic photos, in fact, taken by British Rally Media over the last few weeks. And it looks like quite the beast, to be honest. And ditto the Perez Stratos. I mean, that's a car that I've seen various Ankara rallies back in the day in various liveries, and it's good to see it back out again after its fiery incident a few years back.
A suitably left field gravel crew-esque choice of the TR7 there, and showing your patriotic BL supporting side as well, Jamie.
I never thought of that. I mean, yeah, it's like a Birmingham Stratos, isn't it? A Brummy wedge.
And so they were known as in period, was it?
Yeah. I believe so, yeah. I believe Cesare Fiorio did look over it and think, Christ, lads, we're on our uppers here. That's a quote.
A direct quote, yeah. We can. It's not libelous to say that or anything, is it?
I don't know. I mean, it's. I think. Well, yeah. Cesare Fiorio is still around, so he might be litigious, but who knows?
And recently, spotted on social media banging through like a rally sim as well. So he's still got it.
So he's still compos mentis enough to take us to court, is what you're saying. Okay, good.
Yes, wow. Yes. Well, or you maybe.
So. Thanks for the solidarity.
Yeah, I'm going to go down a little bit further in the interest because I think a highlight for me is the Celica twin cam turbo, driven by Gregor Demevius of Belgium. And it's awesome to see that out. Like it's kind of an also ran as well, similar, not quite in terms of, well, you couldn't really compare them to the TR7, but it was kind of designed for a specific purpose, not to compete on all fronts in period. But yeah, it's great. A very different choice to break up the multitude of escorts. And the 911, of course, is very popular as well. But yeah, I think that would be awesome to see. But I think he'll be hard pushed to take the overall honours against the local talent.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've never seen a twin cam Celica driven in anger, only parked up at various shows and things. So that'll be quite something. Ditto the various Fulvias. I love a Fulvia. I think it might be one of the straight up prettiest rally cars of them all. Just a really nice, dainty little thing.
Took the words out of my mouth. Dainty describes a Fulvia absolutely perfectly.
It's also, I think, the car that throughout growing up, I was staggered when I learned, probably at the age of like 15 years of age, that it was actually a front wheel drive car. For most of my adolescence, I would have put all the money I didn't have on it being rear wheel drive. It should be rear wheel drive, surely. And yet, yeah, the more you know.
Yeah, because
there's so much when you go further down. The Jemison Chevette. Jemison have a long history of building Chevette rally cars, so it's good to see a HSR out and about, and obviously an Ascona 400. So GM 1980s, well represented.
Yeah, and surprisingly, not a lot of sunbeams actually, but and a couple. There's more than one Starion, which is nice. Penty Rikla would approve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's but as we've said or alluded to, this is a rally where your car matters. Of course it does, but really, like RACs of old, it's riding your luck, having a good eye for the conditions, and driving within those conditions, really, and choosing when to push. So it'll be fascinating to see who chooses who plays their hand best. I mean, only a fool would bet against the likes of Oliver Solberg setting the timesheets alight quite early on. And who knows, he could well continue to do that for the entire 5 days and be sitting pretty come Monday. But I think it's fair to say this is a rally that rewards experience and a cool head as much as anything else. And it might perhaps be an older and more experienced person that emerges at the top.
Yeah, and of course Oliver can't count on necessarily the local knowledge that some of the entrants will have, and I think you're right. I think I'm going to throw out a bold prediction here. Oliver Solberg for the most stage wins, but not to win the rally.
I wouldn't dispute that, to be honest, mate. I think it's going to be I mean, heck, anyone who has an internet connection and likes rallying would have seen the footage of him shaking down that escort at Sweet Lamb a few weeks ago, and it was a joy to watch. And if he can keep doing that, and if the engine holds together and everything else holds together for the days, then actually he will be the fucking winner. But I suspect reality and poor luck and mechanical malady and who knows what else might rear its ugly head.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say, look, there's plenty of other guys even that will try and put it up to him on pace alone. So I think with that all covered, maybe it's time to introduce a couple of people who are going to be competing on the event itself.
Before you do that, we all need to put our necks on the line and say who we think is actually going to win. And I think we should do it on the count of three, and we'll say we'll say at the same time because we don't know what each other thinks, and we'll put our respective necks on the line. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Osian Pryce.
Marty McCormack.
We are. See, there's nothing at stake and there's no money, but
We'll see how right we are in a few days' time. But look, it's very difficult. I mean, I have the entry list in front of me, and it's ridiculous, really. That it is an absolute lottery event, and it's the proper definition of a finishers rally. So we'll see how it goes, and hopefully, I think there's going to be pretty good coverage. So I'm looking forward to catching some clips, some highlights, and some photographs as the event progresses.
I'll send you some photos when I've got trench foot at some point on Friday night.
I need to get the foot wraps on, man. Eastern Front style. So with our predictions or gambles in place, now it's time to introduce a couple of people who will be competing on the event itself, a driver and a co-driver, although not in the same car. First up is Bryn Pearce, who will be sitting alongside Television's Chris Harris in a total prepared Porsche 911. So now we welcome a man with no shortage of experience in historic rallying and someone about to embark on their fifth outing in the Roger Albert Clark Rally. And over 20 years of co-driving experience in a variety of mostly classic machinery, from Escorts to Minis to Datsuns and many others in between. Though if EWRC is to be believed, it would be his first time out in a 911 on this year's running of the event, where he'll be found co-driving once again for Chris Harris. From North Wales, welcome along, Bryn Pearce to Rally DNA. Bryn, how are you?
Oh, very good, guys. Thank you ever so much for having me along. Yeah, good.
Thanks for joining us.
No, obviously, you've mentioned you have years of experience in the co-driver's seat, but of course, the RAC is rather unique in many ways. Could you give us an idea of the challenge of the event and how it differs from, say, the Nicky Grist stages or of the Killarney Historic?
Yeah, so I mean, the event's changed massively over the 17 or 18 years since I first did it. So the biggest difference now to back in 06 when I first did it is it's all on pace notes as opposed to maps. So back then, a lot of your preparation would have been the knowledge you'd gained, poring over the map, seeing which bits of the stages you recognise, etc. and so on. Now it's spending hours and hours and hours watching the DVD from on the pace note in our case, and having a look at the notes and seeing what they look like, and just familiarising yourself with the stages, really. And I suppose it's one of the slightly sad things about rallying, in the UK, especially at the moment, is the amount of stages you can use are a little bit limited. So you get almost a race circuit knowledge over some of them. But that's that's the difference in the event from when I first did it, and compared it to something like the Nicky Grist. So probably a BTRDA event, you probably spend, I don't know, 12 to 15 hours, prepping for it to do the job justice. In my case, there might be some people do more, some people do less, I'm sure. The RAC, by the time you're doing all your movement schedules, although I'm a bit spoiled this year, I'll get onto that in a second. But by the time you're doing all your schedules and poring over all the paperwork and familiarising yourself with the regulations, and then 5 days of notes, it's probably a good 100 hours worth of prep to really do it justice. And certainly 2 years ago when we did it, it was there or thereabouts. We had a change of prep company about 3 weeks before the event, so we kind of had to sort of scrap everything and start again 2 years ago. Whereas this year's a little bit different in a whole manner of ways in the way we've approached it. Yeah.
And would you see there, other than obviously moving from the maps to the proper pace notes now, what was the biggest change you found in the event from 06, that first time out to today?
So the biggest change, aside from the maps, I'll come back to maps in a minute, but the biggest change aside from the maps is the mileage. So from memory, I think 06 was about 160 stage miles, roughly. Don't quote me on that, anybody. But and this time I think it's 330, give or take a few miles. So it's double the mileage. And being on notes, the whole event's an awful lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of in many ways you break it down into 5 single days.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost approach one. You approach each day as almost like a big BTRDA event, although you do double the mileage of a BTRDA event. It's probably closer to an old Ancro round, if you remember the Ancro Championship. Similar sort of stage mileage per day. And it really puts the service crews to test. You're allowed chase cars, management cars. I'm in old school there again. You're allowed management cars on the event, which I don't think you're allowed on any other event in the UK now, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, there's a huge amount of differences in that respect, yeah.
Would you say it's managed? Because it looks from the outside as if it's managed to sort of stay true to that original ethos of replicating or paying homage to the spirit of the original, i.e., the RAC, in terms of the challenge, the long haul nature of it.
Yeah, no, it's probably ironically, for an event that's dominated by Mark II escorts, although Porsche won it 2 years ago, basically, but it is dominated by Mark II escorts. In its nature and format, it's probably closer to an early 90s RAC. So if you look at the 1991 RAC, that had a fairly similar mileage over a similar timescale.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not quite like a 70s one where there was an awful lot of through the night stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't exist anymore. Sadly, I'd be quite happy if it did personally, but it doesn't for various reasons, health and safety and all that sort of stuff. So it's like an early 90s RAC, but dominated by 70s cars in the modern world, and it does hold true to the ethos. I think from a competitor's point of view, absolutely, the spectators. Evidently so. I noticed that the Thursday and Friday are sold out for advance tickets already, which is brilliant. And I suppose the only thing you don't have that you would have had back then are sort of the overnight ceremonial halts and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, and as I know from sort of personal experiences with what we did with Rally GB over the years, you need another whole team to do that sort of thing. You need councils on board, and it massively adds to the cost and the whole nature of organisation in the event. So yeah, it absolutely does hold true to what I say is an early 90s RAC. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you kind of touched upon this there, but have you noticed that it seems to have grown in stature, or at least following amongst the sort of the non-rally community, or perhaps the guys who aren't completely as lockstep with it, as we all are. Do you notice that, when you're actually competing within it, in terms of the buzz about it?
Yeah,
compared to earlier years, let's say.
Yeah. There's a lot more people out there, so you do notice it. Oddly, you don't. Over the last few years, you haven't seen that many at service halls and that sort of thing. They tend to actually be in the woods, which is quite nice.
Mhm.
Although this year, I've noticed, there's a bit more emphasis on places like Sweet Lamb as a service area, and Walters Arena. I'd hazard a guess this year, those first 2 days in Wales are going to be absolutely rammed full of people, which would be lovely to see. Yeah.
And it's attracting, as you say, into those woods at this time of year. You're seeing those crowds, but it's crowds of proper fans, really committed people to go and make that trip at that time of year into the woods, spend the time out there. It's cold, it's wet. We're used to cold and wet being rally fans, but, taking that time to do that for an event like that is really encouraging, that it's attracting those numbers, and it really speaks to the stature of the event.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and sorry, just sort of slightly going back to Jamie's point as well, the sort of the casual fan, if you like, or the non bobble hatter, to coin an old phrase. I think if you want to attract them, you probably have to go back to what I was just saying a minute or two ago, where you'd actually be taking it more to them, and that's probably the one difference to an actual Lombard RAC or Network Q, is that you don't have the spectator stages. And I know, back when the Roger Albert started 20 years ago, those spectator stages were catered for. From memory, I think there was sort of 3 or 4 that they used to do, country houses and that sort of thing. So there is a slight difference, but certainly for the hardened rally fan, I've got good friends up here who've never watched the event before, and are making the trip down on the Friday this time, purely just because of the scale of the entry and the people who were doing it. We had a Solberg and a Meek and sorts of various other people into the mix. It kind of focuses the attention. We don't have a world championship round anymore, and it is by far the biggest rally in the UK.
Sounds like we need a Mickey Mouse stage or two for old time's sake.
Yeah,
back to Longley.
Yeah. Well, we've got that long trek up from Sweet Lamb up to Carlisle on the Friday night, and I was actually just talking with somebody about an hour ago, and I said you could really shoehorn a few spectator stages in on the run up there, and you drive them up. But yeah. From what I've done, myself in the past, I can totally understand why Colin and the team steer away from them, because the organisational side of putting on those spectator stages is utterly mad, and the infrastructure you have to put in place. So I can understand why they don't.
Is that purely because the sort of double-edged sword of bringing the rally to the people means that you have to bring the rally to populated areas, and therefore road closures and everything else get a lot more, tricky? Yeah,
so if you've got a local council on board, so we ran an event the other week, just a Clubman Targa event and historic road rally. And we've got a very amenable local council who let us close off the high street and have arches and all sorts of stuff, and bent over backwards to help us. If you haven't got that, it becomes very, very difficult. And certainly if you run a spectator stage in a country estate, with the health and safety and the risk assessments and local council safety advisory groups and all that sort of stuff, you're putting in miles of barriers, the costs, the manpower. It's a huge undertaking. So yeah, I can entirely understand why they wouldn't do it here.
You were 10th in the Open Rally and 3rd in class last time out, but now in a car identical to the one which took the overall win in 2021. So does this mean you and Chris are going to be trying to shoot for top honours this time out? The competition does look like it's going to be stiffer than ever this year, going off the entry, as you pointed out, a few big names and big cars as well. Look, we've got a mega, for a rally that, as you said, it was an escort rally, a Mark II escort rally specifically, really for forever and ever. But now we've got, Perez's and the Stratos, a couple of 911s floating about now as well.
Chris Ingram in the TR7.
Yeah, which is a lovely
Bit of a
addition as
dark
well.
horse,
Yeah. You know, what's the goal for you guys this year? Getting to the end like every rally, obviously, and especially in a rally like this. But
we went off on stage 2 years ago, so that wouldn't be ideal, would it? But
get to stage 3 at least this time.
Yeah. It's not quite the same Porsche as the one that won it. We've got a bigger spoiler on the back.
Oh well, yeah.
Quite the same
course.
Well, I was going to say with Richard Tuthill himself competing, I assume, like I hope for you guys he hasn't kept the best one for himself and given you two the dud from the back of the workshop, you know.
I believe, Rich is using the one that did win, as far as I know, isn't he? But I genuinely don't know actually. So Chris hasn't done a gravel rally since we did that one 2 years ago. He did rally with no name on snow and ice back in March in Norway, I think it was, maybe Sweden, can't remember. Which he won. Don't know whether that means anything or not. I'm not really sure, but we'll have to see. Ironically, I've you alluded to some of the stuff I sat in before, and I've never actually sat in a 911 on a rally. So who knows is the honest answer. The rest of the Porsches are running Pirellis. We're on MRFs, so there's a slight difference there. I believe there's a chance of snow. So who knows? Yeah.
But hopefully not a repeat of the Storm Marwin last year, because you guys were one of the crews trapped in Kielder Forest, were you?
Well, no, we actually made it out the forest, to be fair. Okay. So, I mean, it's quite a long story, that. So the stage that was the last stage we went into, we sat on the start line and actually said to the I think he was the stage commander, I said, we're not going in there, are we, guys? And he said, yeah, we're carrying on. I thought, fair enough. And we sort of did about 3 miles in and then came around a hairpin right, spotted some radio cars at a junction, went maybe half a mile up the stage and there was a tree down and it sort of got to 5 of us cars all backed up and we sort of all shunted around. So only 10 minutes had passed. We went back down to this hairpin where the radio crews had been and it was deserted. Everyone had gone. So we sort of, it became every man for himself and we, it was sort of a very strange convoy of rally cars and management crews. Very few of them actually matched each other because all the phone masts had gone down. So where we ended up was basically where most people had run out of fuel. I can't actually remember the name of the little village or town that we all ended up by. But yeah, we ended up on the side of the fallen down trees and the town was on the other. And you could have gone into that pub that many people ended up in at about 2:00 in the morning. But if you remember, it was just while COVID was still, sort of in. I mean, I know it still exists now, but it was still quite prevalent then. And for various reasons, we went too wild on going into a space that was that full of people. So we thought, the road will go soon, and we got to about 4:30 in the morning. Bear in mind, everyone else had shot off down there at 2:00, and I actually said to Chris, I couldn't stop my teeth chattering. I said, we need to knock this on the head and go down there now. So yeah, we got in there at about 4:30, 5:00 to the site of most people I knew who'd been drinking for several hours. And they thrust a duvet and a pillow at Chris. Somebody thrust a pint in my hand, and it was. It cheered us both up immensely in different ways, but
You sure the landlord wasn't down there felling trees just to sort of drum up business or something?
No. Landlady, actually. She was lovely, to be fair to her, and they made bacon rolls and everybody had a bit of a whip round for them for everything they'd done. It's memories like that from the RIC that you can't forget. And I've been very lucky over the years. I mentioned the first one I did in 2006 was with a guy called Keith Cornell. In a very nice Mark II, and it was a long first day that finished up in Carlisle again. Ironically, second day started in. Now I'll probably say this wrong, being a Welshman. It was either A or I Forest. I don't quite know how you say it, but and there was snow everywhere, and we were going through the stage. I think we were 18th overall going into it, and there were cars off everywhere. And I can remember mentally ticking off where we'd have been going up to. And I think we probably got up to about 12th, if I remember rightly. We were just getting towards the end of the stage. And it on a straight piece of road, and it just sort of tipped slightly sideways onto what looked like a grass verge. But what it was actually was grass floating on water in a big ditch. Kept his foot in like all good rally drivers. But it just sucked us in, and there was a tree stump at the end and hit that.
Bugger.
Went end over end down the stage. And it knocked me out, to be quite honest with you. And I can remember Keith saying to me, he said, when the car stopped, he said, I looked across and you were slumped in your belts with a bit of a bloodied and muddied face because the screen had come in. Poor bloke thought he killed me or something. It was just, it was mad. But now I did the event in 13 with, I don't know if people remember David Winstanley, who's much missed, who used to make a lot of the rally videos. I did it with David in 2013, who was quite a character. And if you ever wanted lessons in how to do a big event as cheaply as possible and getting other people to pay for the privilege, David was your man. It's just an absolute one-off, David, and stories he'd tell you not for printing really, and probably some sort of libel case could come out of those. But no, it was. But we held our summit then. You've given me a potted history of the past RACs there, aren't I? And 14.
That's great.
14, I was lucky enough to sit with a guy called Rudy Lancaster. And Rudy, back in the sort of early 90s, was one of the top Peugeot Challenge guys. And he came back into the sport in historic rallying. And we did Rally GB National in 14. And then 2 weeks later, we did the RAC. And the overriding memory of that, so that RAC was the last one that was on maps. And my background being a good Welshman is road rallies. So I was brought up on maps and potties and all that sort of stuff. And it was the last event on maps. And we were having a pretty good run, sort of setting sort of top 3, top 5 times most of the Saturday. And we went into Kielder sort of late evening. It was a lovely night. I'm going to try and paint a picture with words out, see how we go. It was a lovely evening, stars out, one of those sort of crisp winter's evenings. And I remember sitting on the start line actually and thinking this is quite surreal. You have your potty glowing away on your lap, the map below it sort of coming alive, because I loved the map. It sort of spoke to me, and you could see all the contours coming alive, the hills coming out of the map and stuff. And you could hear that BDG through the intercom starting to rev. And we sort of took off, and you go into the stage, you could smell the pine and you could smell the hot mud on the exhaust. And I thought, it just doesn't get any better than this. And our minute man was Steve Perez in the Stratos. And it was probably about, I think, 3 miles from the end of the stage, maybe a little bit, maybe 4 miles. We caught his taillights. And as all good drivers know, when you start seeing taillights, it's like a red rag to a bull.
The red mist descends.
Yeah. So we probably caught him after about a mile. And all of those things that I've just mentioned, the potty, the smells, the noises. And then you catch a Stratos on the RAC, and you can hear that engine through your intercom. You can hear the BDG, and you can see its exhausts glowing at you. I just thought that, if I never do another event, that's as good as it gets. It was just magical, absolutely magical. And that for me was the ethos of the RAC, because it truly then did hark back to the 70s when they were on maps. Well, actually, they were on maps until 1989, weren't they? But it just, it's a magical memory. And if you could bottle that or book that and go around non-rally fans and go, have a sniff of this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
If you had a framed memory with a scratch and sniff thing on it, here you go.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
It was just, you probably gathered it. It's just still vivid in my mind.
That's incredible.
15. I seem to remember I was entered with someone, but that's the one that got cancelled. And then I had a bit of time off actually with various things. We had a little one and whatever and whatnot. And then Chris, sort of going back to 2013, the company that ran us were building an M3 for Chris Harris. And the whole event he was messaging saying, "Oh, David, it looks mega. I need to do this one day. I need to do this one day." And Chris and I did. we've done quite a lot of events over the years. I don't think people realise that there's sort of now a 10-year relationship where we've sat together. I think they just think that I've sort of lucked in by some measures, and I've just sort of sat with him recently. But it's a 10-year friendship, and he finally decided after COVID that you've only got one life, so you need to make the most of it. And that's how we ended up doing it in 21. And we've alluded to the stories of sleeping in the car and all that sort of stuff. But I know it sounds a bit strange, really, when you talk about someone like Chris. But Chris rarely drives on gravel, and certainly not on ice without studs. That rally with no name, they were all on studs. So to say I was proud of him for what he managed to do back in 21 might sound a little bit odd, but it makes perfect sense to me, because it's a huge challenge, and to put your trust in someone when he's so used to circuit racing, where he's relying on his own senses permanently. It's a big thing to do, and I don't think that can be underestimated. So we'll
I remember watching the videos when he just got the M3 that time, actually, when it was on. Was he on Drive Network then, or one of those things on YouTube when he was?
Yeah, he was on Drive.
The initial videos of the E30 back in the day.
Yeah, Sweet Lamb. Yeah, where we lost the wheel. Yeah. But no, I mean that E30 M3. I mean, no one. I was going to say no one who's sane, but that's a bit harsh. If he hears this, he'll probably have something to say. But to pick an E30 M3 and build a gravel car, that's just not what you do, really. But he liked the thought of being different, and I think perhaps he thought he was sort of Graham Middleton in 1990 or something. He's about the only other person I can think of who used one on gravel.
It's not Francois Chapuis approved, is it?
No. Oh, actually, thinking about it, didn't Harry Vatanen use one on 1,000 Lakes maybe one year?
He
may well have done.
Did.
Yeah, and Mark Douay had one in San Remo, so partly.
Yeah.
That
was mixed that year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was mixed.
Yeah.
Douay wrestled a few decent results out of E30s on gravel.
Oh, did he? Oh, missed that.
Yeah, compare not he never won in one, as you wouldn't, but it probably put it in a position that most thought wouldn't have been where an E30 should be on gravel rounds.
Yeah. But no, I mean that's a fabulous car, and that's sitting. Well, if you've seen Chris's book actually that's come out in the last week, it's on the cover of his book. Mm-hmm. So he's still got it, and it's still sitting in his workshop. As is the Escort that we used 2 years ago. He owns that car as well.
Yeah, it's a nice car, that, and it's certainly a somewhat obtuse choice for a gravel car, some would think. But it's nice to see something other than a Mark II Escort, not to diminish the love for a Mark II Escort, but you need a bit of variety.
It's just sitting there at the moment. The problem with those M3s is they're now worth so much, and the proper engines aren't the easiest to come by. So if you do damage one, it's a big undertaking. So he just doesn't want to take it out anymore, which is a real shame. But there we go. Yeah. One of the unusual things. I know you mentioned at the start of this that Datsun 240Z, which I don't know. That must be on EWRC. That was a strange car to sit in as well. The bonnet seemed to go on forever. Really odd. That made a nice noise as well if you're into noise or stuff.
Yeah.
That's the 240 is a car I sort of always associate with footage of oldie worldy RACs. I think it's because there's a photo of Tony Fall down the middle of a gorge with a 240, seemingly at the bottom of it, and both of them standing obviously unhurt, but the car being seemingly miles and miles away from the stage.
Oh yeah, it's the 71 RAC.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's upside down, wasn't it? The car.
Yeah.
Right. One of the best rally videos ever. That from Harrogate started. Yeah. We're nerding out here, aren't we? Probably getting a bit too much for people.
No, not for this podcast. We've a niche. It's a niche home for niche people, so it's okay. So, what are you looking forward to most about this year's event? And is there a stage that you're looking forward to the most?
It's a stage. Probably Meherin. It's a classic. Well, actually, to be fair, Meherin or Crochan. Either of those, or Crichan, however you like to say it. But I'm full of the so Crochan for me. But Yeah, either of those two, because they're real stages. And Cruachan was 2 years ago. It was probably the highlight of the event for both Chris and myself, actually. They're ones that flow. They have a nice flow about them, and they're sort of what you call proper stages. Not to do the other stages down. I mean, they all are proper stages, but they're two personal favourites. In Wales, admittedly, I might be a bit parochial with that one. But,
it's okay. We can forgive you for that.
Yeah, no. Stage-wise, that and just the real privilege of being able to do the event in the car that we're doing the event in, which is on my. I have a little tick list of cars that I still want to rally, and that was one of them, a 911, and the other one's a Group A Escort Cosworth. So I've sat in. I've been really lucky over the last 28 years, 30 years, whatever it is, how long I've been competing, to sit in most things. I ticked off the Delta box 2 years ago.
That was with Matthew, was it?
Yeah. Which I think was the first gravel rally after COVID, from memory.
This is Matthew Stedman.
That's it. Yeah, he sold the car now. But yes, that was a nice box to tick, and I sat in a 6R4 years ago and stuff like that. So yeah, so a 911 and an Escort Cosworth. If anyone's listening, after a co-driver for an Escort Cosworth, I'm sure the guys will give you my number. As I say, I hate to use that word again, but it is an absolute privilege to be able to do an event of that mileage in this day and age. And I must be honest, in this economic climate, because it's a very funny world at the moment. And there's people that would, give their right hand to, probably to have my seat, actually, to be fair, but but to do the event in general, and there's only 180 of us, 360 people, if you like, that are getting that chance. And I don't want to tempt fate, but who knows if we'll ever get a chance to do an event that big in the UK again. I think it's getting ever harder for clubs in general to organise events, regardless of their length. The environmental lobby has a bigger and bigger say in things. We live on a very crowded island, so making the most of it while we can, I think, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, spot on. Bryn, thanks so much for giving us your time. We wish you the very best of luck for you and Chris on the event. We'll be following the event anyway, I'm sure, very closely. I think Jamie's planning on getting down anyway, aren't you?
I think they're trying to get down Friday, yes.
No, do come and say hello if you're in the service.
Oh, well, absolutely. Yeah. Especially now you've told me how to pronounce Cruachan. I've been saying Cricken all my life. But,
yeah, it's one of those things, really, where you sort of have to really sort of phlegm up the back of your throat. But you can, different ways of saying things. Nothing's wrong as long as it's nearly right. I don't think anyone's going to complain, are
they? Thanks again for coming on, man.
And of course, as well, and I'm sure there's many. I know there's more than a few competitors that listen to this who might be in need of a custom race suit in the future. You might be a man to contact as well.
Yeah, so that's actually the day job. So we on the UK mainland, we're the agents for Marina Racewear. So if anybody's looking for a custom suit, I'm sure we can look after you and do you some sort of crew package that's amenable to everybody's pocket.
Brilliant stuff. Bryn, thanks again for your time and best of luck
on
the RSC.
Thanks ever so much for having me. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Next, we are speaking to another Welshman, this time 2022 British Rally champion, Osian Pryce, fresh from a win on the continent in an I-20 Rally 2 with Stefan Prevost on the notes. Now he's swapping four-wheel drive for two-wheel drive once again in the form of a Mark II Escort. Osian, welcome to Rally DNA and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Osian, you were quite a late entry to the event. What led you to pull this together and throw your hat into the ring?
It's an interesting one, really. I'd had obviously my friends and everybody that was involved since last year. They've all been sort of banging on about it really all year. And to be fair, I'd stuck to my guns, and I said, look, I'm concentrating on other things. I'm not going to go and do it. I'm also trying to build my own car, which I've completely neglected because I'm doing other things. So I thought that should really come first. But there was just, even after the Meek and the Solberg announcements, I still really wasn't, there's nobody really dangling any carrots or anything. But I think it was just we went to, like you said earlier, we went to Sardinia. We had a good run there. We also had a good run, obviously, in Rally Ceredigion, and I think it was my partner said, "Well, you may as well do the RAC then," and she kind of said it like that. I thought, you may as well end the year off on a high, and I didn't really register initially, and I thought, yeah, whatever, as you normally do, and I wasn't, like I say, I wasn't really planning to do it, so I sent a text message to Grant Chant, whose car that I'm using on the rally, and I knew full well that the car that I'd used last time was already hired out. So I thought, well, that's me done. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. But I thought I'll just send him a text just to see, has he got a car available? And I can put it to bed then and tell everybody, look, he hasn't got a car. I sent him a text one Sunday morning. He said, yeah, I'll find you a car, he said. And I thought, oh God, maybe not the answer I was looking for. So it kind of led from there then, really. My best friend, Rodri, who's co-driving for me, said, come on, you've got to do it. And I said, well, look, if you help me find some budget, then we'll agree on that. And if we get to those points in target, we'll have a go. And if it happens, it happens. So again, I went in touch with Colin Heppenstall and said, can I get an entry? He said, yeah, there's a couple left, because obviously there was a few dropouts, and it all kind of escalated very quickly. And as soon as you start getting a few sponsors on board, they all sort of followed. We had, a spell of things coming in quickly, and then there was dry patches where nothing was happening for weeks. But it's all come together really in less than 6 weeks. So it's been a lot of work. And doing other bits and bobs in between, and thinking of next year, and getting engaged in the middle of it. So it's been a hectic 2 months, really.
Well, congratulations to cap all that off. Yeah,
thank you.
Quite an achievement to pull that together in that period, because that was going to be my next question. When was that phone call made to by the time you'd actually getting the entry in?
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think when it was. I think from now. I think it's 8 weeks from now. I think it actually started. Solberg and Meek had already been announced, and I think there was maybe like a week or something after that at least. Mm-hmm. Before I'd even started, that was literally the text message to Grant, and that was it. The rest sort of came to life maybe a week or two later, when things started to actually roll and talk about tires and sponsors and bits and bobs like that. But it's all come together. Still a few things to do, as there always is. But if anything, we're probably a lot more prepared than last time. Last time we were going for the British Championship, and I had three events on the bounce, I think. One was obviously a test for the RAC. Then we went to Ulster to concentrate really on the British Championship, and then we had like a few days and we were straight into the RAC. So this time I've been able to sort of live it and breathe it for weeks really. So it's been quite nice.
Will you be able to draw on your experience from competing in 2021? And I hasten to worry about asking this, but can you talk us through how you managed to retire from the 2021 event? I know it was fairly sudden.
Yeah, we were chatting again today, myself and Rodri, my co-driver. He was actually one of my mechanics last year, and even he said from being he was in the chase van last time, chasing around after us. So he's got stuff that he remembers and little tricks to, he knows what he's up against, even though he was sort of on the other side of the fence as such. Mm-hmm. But you remember things, and you know how things go, what happens, what unforeseen there is, and really as well what gets hammering and what you need to be careful of, what you need to preserve, and obviously going back to the second part of your question, I don't think anything could have. Doesn't matter how much preserving we did of the car. What happened. Obviously, the stub axle broke on the first stage of the final day, and we don't really know why. Obviously, there's a lot of people with speculation, but it's one of those things. You have to take it on the chin, and then learn from it and hope to God it doesn't happen again this year.
One of those it's rallying moments that doesn't make it any easier to swallow, I imagine.
No, it was one of those. We were in a bad run. We had a poor couple of weeks, and I do think, you know, if luck's with you, it's with you for a while, and when it's not, you're in it. You've got to see it out, really. And it was one of those. It didn't surprise me when something went wrong. That our luck was pretty much all run out. But like you say, it is rallying. That's as cruel as it gets. You know, you've done all the hard work. You probably on the easiest day of the rally, if you took the ice away. But in terms of a day's rallying, it was fairly straightforward. So yeah, it happens. You learn from it as well, which is good. So every day is a school day when you get in a rally car, to be fair.
It must be an advantage this year, like other than him being your best mate, having Rodri alongside you. Given that he was spannering last year, it will be, I'm sure, a useful tool to have, you know, on road sections and everything, just to go over maybe what the rally's doing to the car, stuff you can keep an eye out for as well, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually rallied in this car with Grant himself this year. So he's done Corsica, Costa Brava, all these long events. So, you know, he's up to speed with co-driving, and, you know, he's done a lot of rallies this year, probably more than me, really. But yeah, it does help when you have a crew in the car that knows what the rally's about. I mean, we were chatting today, as I said, you know, we were quite naive last year. Yeah, we knew we had a 5-day rally. The only thing that I knew really was the car and a few stages. But you know, this year we got so much more to think of, and material almost to sort of plan and, you know, get things in place and be a bit more organized and be a bit more relaxed about it. Because obviously when you're relaxed, you know, the stage times will be there. So yeah, it's like anything really. Like when I've done World Championship events, you go back for the second year and everything's just easier, just because you've been there for the previous year. So yeah, it definitely does help, and like I say, it helps that both of us have been there and experienced it before.
You mentioned, sorry, go on, Jamie.
I was going to say it's a pretty star-studded entry list this year, and without sort of, you know, getting carried away and thinking of the end already. Have you earmarked who you think might be your toughest opposition?
Well, I think it's a tricky one to sort of rule anybody out, really. I think I counted on the entry list. I think there's about, you know, at least 12 people that can win the rally on speed alone. But as you know, you've only got to look last time. The car that won the rally, you know, wasn't the fastest car at all. I don't think it won any stages up to the point that both Paul and myself retired. So yeah, there's not going to be one person. Anybody in the top 10, really, you need to keep an eye on. There's people ahead of us. You know, the big names. Matt, he's obviously car one. He's multiple winner of this rally. Jason is a car behind us, and, you know, others that are going to follow suit. Richard Tuthill as well has had a successful year, so you can't rule anybody out, really. But I think the winner of the rally will probably be the smartest driver, I would have thought. Otherwise, if the fastest man does win, but on pace alone, I think they should probably do a lottery ticket, because this rally does bite, and not everything goes to plan, and you have to use your head. You can't just drive balls out and hope for the best. In my opinion, people might disagree, but you have to sort of take calculated risks, I would have thought.
It's one of those events where the toughest opposition is the rally itself, really. In this case, when you have these big 5-day events, it's it's key to never, as you said, the fastest guy probably isn't going to be the fastest right at the end, because the car mightn't have lasted to the 4th day at that point.
Yeah, no, it is exactly that. And, you know, you look at the last time, the elements, and in terms of the weather, that just threw a massive curveball. And to be fair, if anything, even though that I was underprepared last time, I'd said to myself, if I'm 2.5 minutes behind coming into Wales, I said I can make that back. And I lost, I think, 2 stages locally here, my home stages, because of obviously the weather and the trees had been blown down. but I was 3 minutes behind coming into Wales. And after the first day in Wales, I was only a minute and a half, no minute, I think, just over a minute behind going into the last day. So plan was working fine, but like I say, wheel decided other he wanted to do other things. But you've got to have a bit of a game plan and know when to push, when to preserve, and so on and so forth.
Would it, this kind of links into what you're saying there, would it be safe to assume that you're looking forward to Thursday and Friday stages most of all, given their sort of home stages, as it were?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to them. I'm not actually going to do a test, which is a bit of a shame, but it's probably easier for me, being that I'm not testing, to go into some familiar territory. And they're not easy stages, but I think they're a bit sort of more straightforward than the ones up north. I hope I'm not jinxing myself there. But you can sort of get a bit more of a feel to the car on these stages, and I'm not really like a lot of people really. I don't do much rallying up north, and I haven't done since the RAC. Well, actually, I haven't driven an Escort since the RAC last time. So, but yeah, the stages up there are a lot more challenging for me anyway. And you can't throw the car about as much to get a feel. So it's good that we're starting in Wales. Initially, I thought it would have been nice to finish, but in the circumstance that I'm in, I'm glad that we're starting in Wales and we can just, get a bit of a rhythm. And hopefully by the time we get to the long days and the narrow tracks and rough bits in Kielder, then we'll hopefully have a handle on the job by then.
Does the inner rally geek in you sort of get a bit of a kick from competing on Pondershore and Kielder? Because I think I would, just the history and the weight of it all.
Yeah, I think we as drivers, we take it for granted really, but it's only until you sort of see like old footage of years gone by and you kind of recognize, and even like old photographs and stuff that I see from around here, the stages that we used last time are only a stone throw from the house here, and you see photos from 40 years ago and you think, blimey, that's me now in the current day. And that's sort of when it gives you a bit of a reality check really.
Your first long haul classic event, although one very different from the forests of Wales and the north of England, was the East African Safari Classic in 2019. Did that give you any sort of, did it stand you in good stead going into the first RAC you competed in? And do you think you could take away some similarities from that event to the likes of the RAC?
Yeah, to be honest, it really did. That was obviously an extreme case of the other side of the fence where you really have to preserve, and I think I think there was a saying that Bjorn Waldegard used for the Safari: if you think you're going slow, you need to be going slower. And that's kind of what happened. And when Stig Blomqvist did the Safari when we were there, he was just consistently sort of top 5 times, never having to be fastest, but as time went on, he was ramping up the speed, and you could see it, and I remember sort of noticing that and having the same sort of mindset coming into the RAC in 2021, and I knew I wouldn't be the fastest man, given the circumstance that I was in. And, I'd be happy to say that I probably won't be the fastest man out of the gate next week, but I know what's needed. I know what to do and what not to do. So when you do events like that only you know that you need to be at the end of every day. It doesn't matter where you are, but to be first at the finish, first you have to finish, as they say. So yeah, it's good training.
Absolutely.
And sort of to wrap things up with the start of the rally very much within sight now, how do you physically and mentally prepare for an event like the RAC in the last few days or so before it? Do you just treat it as kind of just another rally and not think about it too much, or is there more pressure?
Yeah, and for me, it'll just be a case of another rally. Most of it for me will be preparation. If I've done all the notes, I think I didn't really get on with the organisers' notes last year, and again, I've put a lot more time into them this time, and hopefully things will flow a bit better. but I tend to prepare for every rally the same. But obviously the scale of this one's slightly more because there's more days, there's more mileage, there's more things to think about, more variables with the management crew. So I'm quite an organized person. I like to be the sort of the main link in the chain, and if anybody wants to know anything, then I get on the case and throw that in the mix with trying to find sponsors and get people on board. It's just business as usual, just like I say, a bigger scale and a lot more to think about.
How many hours do you reckon of DVD watching you'll have done before you start?
Well, so far, just to give you an idea, it's a bit more than I anticipated work-wise. So between Rodri and myself so far, I've gone through the notes once, amended everything, and he's now tidying up the notes after we've only been through them once, basically. So he's tidying them up so he can read them, because there was a lot of changes and a lot of taking stuff out. I'm just trying to simplify them, really, because when you're at speed, you can only have so much information, and then where there is information, you need to make sure it's well marked. But I think we're up to about 35 to 40 hours that we've put in between us so far. It might even be more, to be honest, by now, because I know Rodri's been working away, and he's actually taken them away with him. But we're actually going through them tomorrow night for the first time together. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be probably 50 to 60 hours, I thought, of work from start to finish, I would have thought.
Old school.
Well, I think that probably brings us to a close on that, Ash, and we've a lot of prep to do. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for coming on. Very best of luck for the 23rd when we kick off. And enjoy the rally, and hope you have a good time there and get to the end.
Spot on. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Thank you very much, Osian. Both appreciate you giving us some of your time, especially in the weeks leading up to such a grueling event. Me and Killian both can't wait to be watching the rally. Him from slightly further afield. I'll be there for a few stages, hopefully, on Friday. And hopefully see you all there. Good luck to everyone involved. And let's see who emerges victorious in a few days' time.
I don't think I can add anything to that, Jamie. All I can say is the very best luck to everyone competing and everyone going out and spectating. Have a good time and enjoy what is a fantastic event. You've been listening to Rally DNA once again. We'll see you the next time. I'm Killian Cronin.
I'm Jamie Arkle.
All the best. Goodbye.